Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I am your host. I am Clay Douglas, and I'm going to be hopping around a little bit. I want to go over something I may have talked about before, but it's probably worth rehearing. And when somebody just gave me information, and I have not confirmed it, but they have said that Dianne Feinstein is ready to drop a bill on the House floor banning all guns, making all of you gun owners criminals. Now, being a graduate of the 60s, I've been smoking pot a long time and doing it in states where they needed the prison population. But we realized in the 60s that war was wrong and that, the laws on marijuana and hemp were simply designed to make us into criminals. That is what they want to do. That is, Ayn Rand came from a communist country and tried to tell you in Atlas Shrugged that the government has no power over us honest citizens, so they must make criminals out of us. That's what the whole pot law scam is about, to make you into a criminal. And then, oh yeah, you won't be able to vote, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do that, you won't be able to own one of those guns. And the more people they take out of the right, they take away the right to own guns, and they're trying to do that right now to felons, to anybody that had ADHD, anybody that had attention deficit disorder, anybody that had trauma, was prescribed a medicine. Now they will start putting you in jail for taking your medicine. And I've really seen this coming. I have seen this coming for the last 25 years. Now, I was in the paraphernalia industry, and it was filled with Jewish personalities. Adam's apple, Don Levin was Jewish. They like working on the fringes because they create the fringes. When the Jews in Congress passed laws against and the Jewish lobby and the Israeli lobby, and of course the Soviets, the communists that infiltrated our State Department, yeah, okay, sorry, distracted of the idiocy of people. Okay, now, what is happening here, folks? We have a choice coming up here very quickly. Now, I've been telling you about this and warning you about this for a lot of years. When I saw what happened in Waco, I was outraged, and I swore I'd never allow something like that to be played out on my television set without me trying to do something or me getting involved in some way. And I have matter of fact, I just did a show for Jack McLam the other day, a retired police officer, on Genesis Network. Hope you can catch it. I stood in for Jack McLam, and I complimented Jack for being one of the peace officers, one of being the predecessor, the headman, the man that started it all, the whole Oath Keepers thing, Jack McLam. I just did his show. He's been telling you a long time. We've been trying to reach the police, and it's quite possible we have, because we have reached a lot of people. The awareness today of the whole international banker scam is unsurpassed in history. With the internet, we've been able to get this information back to you, tell you who the communists are, tell you who what they've done to your religion, to Christianity. I mean, even the English general told Washington that within 200 years the Jew religions would dominate, and we would have communism. Now, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, it's written by Jews, about this whole Pharisaic scam that's been going on for thousands of years. We have tried to get to the bottom, and it's a deep well, and it's a muddy waters in there, so it's hard to tell. But when the present gun control dance concludes, America could be doing a waltz with a different partner. World War III, as globalists completely condition us to be absolutely submissive to their desires. If we surrender our guns and capitulate to the globalists, tens of millions of Americans will die from starvation, targeted genocide, and world war. And I've been giving you the progress of this whole New World Order thing, for which they have tried to kill me. But there is an alternative here, and I've always felt the Bible tells us to come out of the Bible. And by the way, on Fridays, I will be having a church service with Pastor Jake Wade and his Way Church. And it's way back there. It's way back there, but it can be right there with you right now with this radio show. We're going to do his Sabbath day sermon on Fridays. And then if you want to participate live with the internet or something like that through me here, you can do that with the Way Church. We will, if you join the Way Church, we'll be happy to send you DVDs of these shows and Pastor Wade's refreshing Christian philosophy. Now, the war right now is against Christians, but they've already pretty well taken the Christians out, because anybody that believes that supporting Israel is the Christian thing to do is sorely deluded. The alternative here is revolution. We could decide, and many of us have, to enter into the tried and true three-stage plan of revolution. These two bipolar choices do not provide America with much of a middle ground. Our future will be one alternative or the other. Now, you may be wondering if this potential revolution will be violent. The answer to that question is it depends on the actions of the bankers who've hijacked our government. The globalist plan is there. It's been laid out for you for 200 years. Oh, don't you know that's a forgery? That's a forgery, says the communist. Says the Jewish communist. That's a forgery. Well, it doesn't really matter who wrote it. A forgery is jack copy of the original, so it don't matter who wrote it, it's a matter of who is using it today. That fits in with the protocols of the elders of Zion, and that's probably got me blocked in a lot of libraries or Office Depot, for instance. We're so focused on the gun control issue right now that we're failing to see the end game, and this could lead us not to prepare accordingly. History shows that any nation that permits gun confiscation in any form invites genocide. However, the Second Amendment debate is a preliminary round to the worldwide conflict that will follow gun confiscation and the imposition of martial law. Now, that's exactly what I've been telling you folks. All they got to do is pass a law, and the Congress up there, Dianne Feinstein, a Jewish congresswoman, and people like the Jewish congressman that just got the warning not to speak at Sandy Hook, Joe. I wish it was not Biden. At any rate, it's another of these gun control people, and he was warned not to go to Sandy Hook. Now, what they're going to do here, these false flag attacks on American schools are being used as a pretext to seize guns. So why do Obama and his puppeteers so desperately want our guns? Dianne Feinstein want our guns because America would never accept the brutal form of martial law and selective genocide that will be needed to subjugate the country and bend it to the will of the globalists. In Russia, they killed 60 million white Christian Russians. You think because you're American that exempts you from that kind of treatment at the hand of communists? Yeah. I've got a... You're kind of a special kind of stupid, aren't you? Alright. You know what? Tired of that. Yeah, the whole thing yesterday, the shooting at the schools with a black man involved, that was just a normal day in Texas, and it certainly wasn't anything they could make into a gun control issue, so it has been dropped. Now, the martial law that is coming, the DHS has ordered 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition. They know some of us will not willingly submit to the coming conscription and the seizure of our assets. So this is why Obama signed into law the NDAA, so he could eliminate the leadership of the coming resistance movements without the negative attention and publicity of a trial. I believe step two will consist of house-to-house gun confiscations and the rounding up of perceived dissidents, the new terrorists, if you will. What this means, folks, is you got a gun, you're a terrorist. You're one of those patriotic people, right? You're following that Clay Douglas. You're following the militia. You're following... Oh, you must be the bad guy. That's what they've been trying to do to me. This is what they try to do even right now. They send their little Sanayan agents in to the talk shows, to the chat rooms and the talk shows, to try to put down anybody that helps, anybody that's trying to help, anybody that might be tempted to help. Yeah, they want to put those people down. They want to stop this. I mean, can't you get this now? As part of this three-stage attack on America, our country will be victimized by a series of involuntary conscriptions by the military or civilian labor brigade. Furthermore, in scenes right out of the movie Hunger Games, the government plans to confiscate any of your valuable resources such as stored food, water, and of course guns and ammunition. You don't need a crystal ball to make this prediction because Obama has already signaled his intention, as witnessed by Obama's issuance of the National Resources Preparedness Executive Order. This executive order gives Obama unlimited power to control virtually every resource and impose virtual slavery upon any and all Americans. You can read the executive order. It's more eye-opening and more draconian than anything ever conceived by the East German Stasi. So why is Obama so hell-bent on subjugating the American public? Simple. The bread and butter of the Federal Reserve, the petrodollars, is being seriously threatened by Russia, China, India, and Iran. The United States has debt-crushing debt, which makes the former Weimar Republic look solvent by comparison. Unfortunately, the United States abandoned this gold standard a long time ago. What then keeps our economy from degenerating into a trading and bartering society resulting from a collapsed dollar? The United States' good fortune is due solely that the world must use the dollar, the petrodollar, if you will, in order to make their nation's individual oil purchases, and this provides the only source of backing for the U.S. dollar that the Federal Reserve requires in order to somewhat sustain our backbreaking debt that the banker-occupied United States government has passed along to American taxpayers in the form of bailouts. Despite the economic pain associated with the enormous debt caused by the Wall Street contrived Ponzi schemes associated with the now infamous derivatives, America's economy has proved to be very resilient. However, if the artificial global dollar demand made possible by the petrodollar system were ever to crumble, our days of economic dominance would abruptly end, and the resulting economic chaos would be followed by the need to impose a martial law on a starving public. Again, tens of millions of Americans will die in this scenario. Now, folks, I have, in a limited way here, I have predicted and planned for this. Now, I planned it on my land that ended up getting taken from me. Yeah, I got paid for it. But the plan for the Liberty Villages was squashed. Now, in light of everything that has happened, think back a little bit on my plan for Liberty Villages, because that plan could be implemented if we had a way to work together. Now, I've tried to set up something to do that. I've tried to set up, and I'm in the process of setting up the Truth Seekers, which would be meetings fueled by DVDs, fueled by information, fueled by leadership like mine, that by people that have been in this fight for a long time, that understand, that haven't been bought out by the communists that control our media. Now, I had my share of the media for many years until a so-called accident took me out. It's time to rebuild that. And there are 3 ways to do that. Well, there's actually many ways to do it. But the Liberty Village concept you can do in your own neighborhood. Just tear out the crabgrass and grow real grass, real food, something real. They don't want you to do that. They're going to try to eliminate you. They're going to try to do that with the neighborhood associations, because this whole Jewish communist agenda has infiltrated your churches. Judeo-Christianity is an infiltration. This is an infiltration of an antichrist satanic plan that someone called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. There's been others out there too, like Operation Northwoods. That's Operation Northwoods. That's real too. Now, unfortunately for every man, woman, and child in America, the day of economic reckoning is quietly approaching. Now, you've already had 1 million Americans lose their homes. Where are they living? On the streets? Where? China has commenced buying Iranian oil and gold. India has followed suit, as have the Russians. The days of the Petro dollar are numbered, and therefore, so is the only source of the backing of our dollar. Have you and your family prepared for the collapse of the dollar and ultimately the collapse of society? Now, like most Americans who have awakened from their slumber, I came to realize that the Federal Reserve Board is responsible for most of the evil in the world, and I personally loathe the organization. It's hard not to cheer the fact that the days of the Federal Reserve dominance may be coming to an abrupt end, yet I would advise against popping the corks on the champagne bottles because, like it or not, America's economic fortunes are tied to the health of the dollar, and our precious dollar has come down with a terminal economic case of the Asian flu. If the Federal Reserve crashes and burns, so will everything you have ever worked for. If the Federal Reserve collapses over the impending crisis, the resulting economic holocaust will make the United States unrecognizable within a very short time, and your personal fortunes will sink right along with the notorious robber barons who are feverishly involved in stealing as many home mortgages as possible through schemes like the robo-signers of mirrors. The Federal Reserve, the same people who perpetrated the mirrors fraud, also involved in buying up mortgage-backed securities in an attempt to garner the lion's share of the housing industry. And if you didn't hear, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals made it legal for the banks to steal your deposits. Don't think for a moment these events are not contrived by the bankers to get as much as they can of the public's assets in as short a time as possible in this time of crisis. The bankers clearly know what is coming, and they're in the process of stealing your assets in order to soften the blow of a collapsing dollar, and their golden parachute will be awarded to them courtesy of your hard-earned assets. Now, surely there must be something that can be done to avert this coming train wreck. Can the United States simply employ economic sanctions and force Iran to its knees without the cooperation of Russia, China, and India? The economic sanctions and an oil embargo will not be effective, and subsequently the United States cannot force Iranians back to the negotiating table with the oil issue. The situation is somewhat reminiscent of what happened in the lead-up to the 2003 Gulf War, when Iraq tried its hand at circumventing the petrodollar with under-the-table deals with France and Germany, in which the euro would be used to purchase oil. Saddam Hussein underestimated the Federal Reserve Board's reach and paid for this miscalculation with his life, because he did not have the support of powerful military allies. Iran is quite a different matter, as they have friends, very dangerous friends, who mean America harm. If the United States seeks to reverse the trend, which seeks the abandonment of the petrodollar system, war seems to be the only option left open to the bankers. Logic would seem to dictate that the military option would be employed, and if, therefore, It should be a simple matter to ratchet up the rhetoric and seize Iranian oil fields and force capitulation. Subsequently, shouldn't the United States dust off an old familiar game plan and create a false flag event similar to the Gulf of Tonkin? Undoubtedly, this is what the Federal Reserve desires in the last-ditch effort to save the petrodollar. However, an act of war needs a pretext. Therefore, we can count on the fact that a series of false flag attacks will be utilized by the Federal Reserve friends or fiends at the CIA in order to justify the coming war with Iran. I predict we will see previously unimaginable false flag attacks which will be falsely pinned on Iranian-based terrorism. When the National Defense Resources Preparedness Executive Order comes into play, Obama will conscript people and resources in a last-ditch effort to save the petrodollar in World War III. Okay, a few more minutes here. Now, interestingly, the globalists have left clues which clearly signal their intentions as well as a fair amount of their game plan. In order to inflict maximum casualties for the desired emotional reaction from the American people, namely fear and submission, balls and sports stadiums are conspicuously effective target for imaginary terrorists. When one considers that the Simon Property Group, the owner of the largest owner of malls in America, as well as the Professional Sports League, have just entered into a See Something, Say Something partnership with the Department of Homeland Security. When one considers the massive purchases made by DHS of 7.5 million pounds of ammonium nitrate, which was used to blow up the Oklahoma City Federal Building, it does not take much foresight or skill in dot connecting to see where this scenario is heading. For the unaware, the false flag strategy has already become operational, as Libyan Ambassador Stevens' death was merely the first of the false flag attacks, which will be used to chart a course for war against Iran and its neighbor Syria. Why is Syria being destabilized? Because it is a doorway that is needed to attack Russia with medium and long-range weapons. And let's take a moment to look at Chinese President Hu, created the pretext for fighting a war which successfully selling the American public on the need to fight the war is one thing. However, winning the war is quite another. How serious are the Russians and the Chinese at standing up to the imperialistic U.S.? Considered that both Chinese President Hu and Major General Zhang Zehong have threaten the United States with nuclear war if they invade either Iran or Syria. The prudent option says this is the newest version of the axis of evil line in the sand. China, India, and Russia have pinned their economic futures on the fact that they are divorcing themselves from the debt-ridden dollar and charting a new economic course with gold as a baseline. They are not going to back down. To put muscle behind the collective defiance to the petrodollar system, China brags it can place 100 million men in the battlefield. Russia maintains over 1,300 nuclear weapons, and India has joined the nuclear weapons fraternity a long time. As you read these words, you may be wondering if the conflict would escalate into nuclear confrontation. I have a hard time imagining a situation in which the losing side would not resort to the use of tactical weapons as a best-case scenario. Ask yourself, if your country was faced with economic military obliteration and the prospect of losing World War III, what would be the losing side? What would the losing side gain by keeping their nuclear missiles sitting in their respective bunkers? The Federal Reserve, folks, is going for broke. The Federal Reserve-controlled United States government is really... Are they really insane enough to launch such a dangerous and potentially catastrophic war? The better question is, what do they have to lose? In the past, the Fed has created fortunes through other people's money. They will employ the same strategy in World War III, and the Federal Reserve will prosecute this war with your money and risk your children to carry out their last-ditch fanatical effort to save the Federal Reserve. Formerly, India, by purchasing $12 billion per year for the privilege of purchase oil, and we loved India all the way to the bank. Unfortunately, and India has joined the revolt against the petrodollar by starting to buy Iran's oil with gold. The situation has even worsened as it appears that China has begun to monetize gold, and that could spell the end of fiat currency in the United States and the European Union. The petrodollar is doomed, and so is our way of life, unless Americans can make Iranians capitulate and stick to the antiquated petrodollar system. Now, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that particular thing. I think there has to be another way. I don't agree with that. Great. Lost that one.